Okay, so the third framework that I have for the soul purpose coaching is universal laws. And there are more than 10 laws that I explained here, but I wanted to anchor these 10 laws. And I have divided into three different categories. So fundamental, these five laws, universal laws, I see them as fundamental that have been impacting my life and I have used it many, many times. And the second column here is category release, which is, I'm going to explain a little bit more. It's a different type of law. And the last segment here is under creation. And what you see here on the right side is 6 different concepts, ideas that come from Bob Proctor's thinking into result. That goes really, really well with applying in this universal law. So let me just explain one by one, right? So number one is law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So the law of perpetual transmutation of energy is that whatever that you hold in the screen of the mind, and then when you impress that upon your subconscious mind, the thought and the picture becomes a physical form. That's it. It's that easy. So what this law of perpetual transmutation of energy teaches us is that if there's something in the outside that we don't want to let that affect our thinking, because then we're gonna create more of that, right? So it's a basic law, but to be able to execute and embody on a day-to-day basis, it requires practice. So it really means to own this idea that the thought is powerful, and then we can own and master our own mind. That's what it means. So law of perpetual transmutation of energy is that anything that we hold in the screen of our mind, and then when we emotionalize and impress that, that thought transfer into the physical form. That's the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Number two, law of polarity. I love this law. So, there's always polarity, left and right, up and down, inside, outside. My favorite is darkness and the light. And how can we use this law of polarity to, whenever we face contrast in the world? So when there's negativity and disempowering a consequent circumstance, how can we use this law of polarity to see the good in it and to utilize that and to change the meaning of how we see things to be able to shift the direction to the positive side, the empowering side? And I'm going to tie it into this number two, law of polarity, into this concept of attitude, because TIR, thinking into result, tells us that the attitude is everything. Attitude is a composite of thoughts and feelings and action. And what kind of attitude we're in every single moment dictate the vibrational frequency that we're in. So it's very easy for all of us to be positive and empowered and expansive when things are going well. But when things are sort of quote unquote challenging and difficult, how can we stay on track by leaning into these universal laws and the power, and then utilizing that? And notice that being in alignment with the universal laws is a combination of faith and the choice, which is the two essence of the soul purpose map, right? Because trusting the universal law is based on faith. And then to be able to choose the thought that is in alignment, to consistently stay in alignment with the universal law, is choice, right? So when things are not going the way that you want to, leaning into faith and then choosing thoughts that requires, or that takes us to, that moves us to where we want to go, is what we want to do. So attitude and law of polarity, right? So number three is law of relativity. Law of relativity is nothing is big or small. And this is very useful, actually. So when something happens and when we have some sort of impact, notice that everything just is, but thinking and the meaning that we attach creates that impact, right? So that is the law of relativity. Nothing is big or small. Only thinking makes so. Nothing is big and small. Only thinking makes so. It is powerful because when you believe that something is huge, I'm going to tie this into a resistance though. You start feeling resistance, right? So how can we attach that different meaning and change the thinking around that same thing so we can be with ease and flow? Does that make sense? So, I'm doing this naturally a little bit right now, but it's really good to begin sort of interchangeably connecting all these laws because these are all intertwined. Okay, law of cause and effect. Now, this is just simple, right? Sometimes people call the third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the cause is in your subconscious. All is in subconscious. Whatever that we're operating at the subconscious level is the cause of the reaction from the universe. And it's, we are going to be using a lot of thinking and feeling, but we also want to take action. Its action is what make us open to receive, right? So the action piece needs to happen with the right intention, the intention of love, intention of giving, intention of serving, instead of intention of fear and not receiving, whatever that is, the doubt that might happen in our mind. So it's really important to stay in that feeling of expansion at the subconscious level, so we can train the subconscious by repeating and auto-suggesting, so we can have the effect that is congruent, or the effect that we want, by having the subconscious vibration in a certain place. The law of vibration and attraction, well, these are sort of connected, right? So when we look at the body from a microscopic level, the molecules are vibrating high speed. And how do we change our vibration? By thinking positive, empowering thoughts, or by thinking negative, disempowering thoughts. Now, the more you think positive thoughts, empowering thoughts, happy feeling, those expansive state creates a better and higher vibration, right? So when you're in gratitude, the vibration is high and faster. When you're feeling sad, discouraged, disempowered, the vibration becomes heavier and slower. And the attraction is a secondary law. So depending on how you're vibrating, you will be attracting the same quality vibrational instances based on your vibration. I'm going to talk about a little bit difference between vibration and frequency. Vibration is, so there are different ways to explain, but what I like is that you can see vibration. So vibration is, frequency is a level of vibration, right? There's an up and down vibration. So happy, high, sad, low, empower, high and fast, disempower, low, right? But frequency is a different radio station. So depending on how you see you, the frequency changes. The Olympic athletes that is winning the game, that is breaking the record, that frequency is high. When somebody is not feeling worthy enough and just staying at home, eating potato chips on the couch, a different lower frequency, right? But that person can be in high vibration by being happy. Does that make sense? So the frequency and vibration are a little bit different. Vibration goes up and down depending on the emotion. Frequency is almost like your standard of how you see yourself, the quality and the level of standard is the best way that I can explain. So in order to attract what you want to be in high vibration, but also we need to shift our frequency to a certain state in order for us to attract the same frequency result. Okay, so those are 5 fundamentals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the second portion, release, is more around letting go, right? So I mentioned a little bit about the law of non-resistance. So it's really important to, navigate ourselves and also our clients to stay in the non-resisting place. So, and notice that this resistance comes only from our thinking, only from our thinking. And the thinking comes from our belief about ourselves and the belief about the situation. So you can use this law in a way that, okay, how can I help you shift the way you're thinking? Because if I can tie it into, as I said earlier, the law of relativity, everything just is. So thinking is what's creating the resistance. So you help people shift their perspective, how you, from a different angle, to see things from a different perspective, right? Number 7, law of forgiveness. This is one of my favorite laws. Probably I said this for every single law. So what I love the most about is that I think most people, so because all these universal laws in this coaching I'm introducing to use to help you and the clients move through what's stopping them, right? And forgiveness is huge because there are a couple of layers in forgiveness. Most people think that forgiveness is forgiving somebody else that harm you or betray, whatever. So the emotional feeling can start shifting, right? That's completely not true. Forgiveness has nothing to do with anybody else, even though somebody else might have been involved. It has everything to do with the feeling inside that you interpreted based on your thinking and belief back then. So we want to observe that, right? What is the feeling that I'm holding onto towards that instance, right? And then we want to begin releasing by not trying to do anything, but by acknowledging it and by being with it. We don't want to go inside of it. We want to face that feeling that is a little bit destructive, and then be with it, because that feeling is waiting for you to acknowledge that feeling. So that's the 50% of the forgiveness. The other 50% of the forgiveness that I love, that only Neville Goddard talks about, is the forgiveness is a permission. This is my interpretation. He doesn't say this way, but forgiveness is, is forward, moving forward, right? Give is giving yourself. So it's about giving yourself a permission to get out of that stuckness. In Power Awareness, he used the term forgiveness in conjunction with sin, which is missing the mark, right? So to not live your ideal. Forgiveness, according to Neville, is to live your life with the consciousness of feeling the wish fulfilled, just like he talks about all the time. Forgiveness is the consciousness of living your life right now, not in the future, right now, with the feeling of wish fulfilled. Because that wish fulfilled is the ideal version that is already letting go all the past thing. And it's interesting because a lot of people are focused on healing the past, which will never happen if you're focusing on healing the past. So you want to acknowledge that and embrace that path and begin introducing the sacred ideal version of you, and then use that practice of conscious imagination, feeling the feeling, and the auto-suggestion. So the new version, the ideal sacred version, becomes your norm. That is true forgiveness. So how can we use that to coach people? That is what we want to focus on. Okay, the last 3, universal law. The law of supply and increase. So there's an infinite supply in the universe. Okay, I just said that, and you probably like the idea, but do you really believe that, right? There's an infinite supply in the universe. And then if you go after the material, physical appearance, it might be difficult to believe that. But because in the spiritual plane, as I said in the roadmap to wholeness, in the 543 integration, there's nothing that's lacking in the spiritual plane, which also means that there's an infinite supply, right? So money is a spiritual idea, health is a spiritual idea, love is a spiritual idea. So in the dimension of the soul, in the 5th dimension, There's nothing that's lacking. It's the world of abundance. It's the world of prosperity. It's the world of freedom. And it's complete and perfect, right? So law of supply, how can we start there when we're facing challenges? And how can we connect the law of supply to the law of perpetual transmutation of energy? Because we have free will, we can imagine anything we want to imagine, right? And if we connect with that energy of completeness, connect with the energy of prosperity, that's where we're going to begin, and then use our mind to see ourselves in that state. Law of increase is basically the urge of the soul seeking fuller expression. We don't want, I think in one of the workshops that I did, I talked about, so the urge that we want more is an inherent nature of the soul wanting fuller expression. And I love when this comes from Science of Getting Rich book by Wallace Wattles, but I love that he says that fuller expression, because not many people pay attention to this, but full is full. Why does he say fuller when full is the full of it, right? That's because the size and the capacity is infinite. So there's no full in the infinite, but it's only fuller, right? So how can you be in that energy, that the infinite supply and the law of increase, that soul wanting to expand and want more, doesn't have any limit, but it's limitless, and it's fuller, seeking fullerness always, to expand and to grow and to give more, to experience more, and to feel the freedom all the time. That is the law of supply and increase. The key law to begin creating stuff, right? The law of sacrifice, and this sounds a little bit like you need to sacrifice, but this is a little bit different. So in order to, this can be called also law of replacement. Like in order to change yourself, change your result, we want to change ourselves, right? Change the way we see ourselves. Well, let me say it again. You don't need to change anything, but you only need to change how you see you in your mind. And then how you see you, start creating the feeling in your body. And then that will lead to become the point of attraction to begin harmonizing different results in your life, right? So, but in order to become somebody, we need to sacrifice the current version of it, meaning to say goodbye to it, right? So in order to bring something new, we need to move something that is not serving us, if that makes sense. So this is a good reminder, because we tend to get attached to the current self. So to observe and begin becoming aware that what is it that I am becoming familiar and attached to, that might be subconscious, that I need to let go and remove to be able to get to the next level. Sometimes, life just gives you an opportunity to let go of the old. And you realize that is happening for the good. Even though in the moment, it might feel painful, right? But in the long run, it's a good thing for all of us. So law of sacrifice is a good thing to remember. The law of obedience is related to law of sacrifice, but how can we be obedient with all these universal laws? How can we, to be in alignment with this law of obedience means that we are not going to stay in a comfort zone, that we are continuing to go after and to be in alignment with that fuller expression that the soul wants to expand. And one of the things that I have been also saying is that, you and then your clients, right? Everybody can decide what they want. We cannot decide what they want for them, if that makes sense. So the goal and the desire needs to come from within. But at the same time, we want to influence that we are infinite being. Means that most of the time when people don't seek too much expansion, or they can feel like it's okay to stay small. That comes from ego, the sense of worthiness. Does that make sense? So when people say I'm fine with where I'm at, or I don't need to have too much change, anybody can have anything they want to, but at the same time, we need to become aware that that statement, whether that's coming from being aligned with the soul by being obedient with the urge of the fuller expression and all these laws, or are we talking from the place of ego? Because the soul doesn't know. Soul only wants to expand and be playful, curious about, so wants to know more, right? And ego tells us, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna be here, okay, and fine. So which one is it? It's a good question to ask. So I'm gonna explain a little bit about this TIR concept. So worthy ideal, this is perfect, right? So what is the worthy ideal of you and the client? Instead of asking the thing that I want, the vision and the goals that I set, am I worthy of this? That's how most people think. But are these goals worthy of my divine being? Is what we want to ask, right? We want to continue to navigate people to seek that worthy ideal, the ideal version of you, because only then that gives you an energy and power to move away from the version of you. The knowing doing gap is huge, right? A lot of people intellectualize all these concepts and understanding, but how can we embody it? Now, that embodiment comes from making this as a lifestyle, to be able to observe our thinking, to be disciplined with our thinking, to only think empowering thoughts, and if I say more, to begin thinking from the end. So the end goal myself, how would I be thinking? How would I be feeling? How would I be acting? So that implementation and self-reflection needs to be happening on a day-to-day basis in order to bridge the knowing doing gap. And we engage in this conscious visualization practice, but we want to be able to feel what we feel inside. We want to be able to name that feeling and locate where that feeling is in the body. And then when we do that practice, we start shifting the subconscious vibration, which is all about bridging that knowing doing gap, right? Paradigm is a multitude of habits. You can call it subconscious programming. And this is the main thing, that Bob Proctor teaches. This is the main thing that people are stuck with. So to recognizing the paradigm, but we're not needing to focus on the paradigm. Once we identify it, we want to go into our ideal, which is the next one. Concept of self is the self-image. So working on the self-image and to really convince ourselves that the fourth dimension, the imagined world, is the real world, because everything that happens in the physical comes from that imagination. And to constantly on a day-to-day basis working on nurturing that fourth dimension and living there is the key. Now, the practice is the integration of belief and behavior. So we want to watch our action and see if that's congruent with the old belief or the new belief. In the law of attraction space, we talk about the thought and the feeling, and action tends to become just sort of pushing through, but the action needs to be effortless with ease. And the action becomes effortless with ease if you're coming from the end result. So the practice for me, I found that it's really useful to observe our action and see and ask a question whether I am moving and acting from the end result. And attitude, I think I mentioned a little bit about it, but it's a composite of thoughts and feelings and action. And those three needs to be aligned in order for the universe to respond to your vibrational state. So these are the 10 universal laws with a little bit of concept from TIR, which is also another framework to see our own tendency, thoughts, feelings, and belief and action tendency, and to be able to navigate and help clients to shift into where they want to go.